Hello there, this is David from David Books and Comics, and today we're going to look at do a deep dive into the artwork of Rudy Nebres in the pages of Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, and working mainly on the character Iron Fist. So this is the first work that Rudy Nebres did with the character, the superhero Iron Fist, in issue number 10, the March issue number 10 of Deadly Hands of Kung Fu. And there you see Iron Fist on the cover. Now, who is Rudy Nebres? Rudy Nebres was born in the Philippines as a Filipino artist in 1937. He was a longtime artist for both Marvel and DC, but he certainly worked on for other companies. He won many accolades and awards for his graphic artwork, including the Ink Pot Award back in 2012 and the Inkwell Award in 2017. And he was inducted into the Joe Sinnott Hall of Fame. So how he came to do comic books in North America was that in 1971, the editors of DC Comics, Joe Orlando and Carmine Infantino, went to the Philippines. And obviously they heard about the many talents and graphic artists that were extant in the Philippines, and they went there and they recruited, among others, Rudy Nebres. He began to work first for DC Comics, working on some of the horror titles like House of Mystery. And then he went on to work for Warren Magazines, where he did some beautiful artwork, and Marvel. And he really, I think, did his best work on this particular title. And also his best work, in my view, is his black and white work, which you'll see a contrast towards the end with his black and white and his color work. Anyway, you've seen some of Nebres' work in some of my other videos, but we're going to go through it as we do this deep dive. His work on Iron Fist in the pages of Deadly Hands of Kung Fu was some of his most notable work. When he drew this long-time story arc that went from issues 19 to 24, which we'll go through. They were subsequently all published all gathered up in this showcase book, Iron Fist, The Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, the complete collection. So all the appearances of Iron Fist you can find here if you don't have the actual issues. But before this edition came out, I had to track down and find the actual issues. I had collected Deadly Hands of Kung Fu way back in the 1970s when I was buying them for 75 cents off the rack when they were coming out. So, and part of collecting comics is following the story continuities and following the continuous work of the story's creators, both the artists and the story. And so that was part of the fun of collecting this, was tracking them all down and learning about the artist and the artwork. Rudy Nebres is, like I said, a great artist. He is known for his, this is my Superman mug. He's known for his work, and like I said, received some of the best awards in the industry for his inking and his artwork. Anyway, so this is the first story. It's called Slay Now and Die Later. The writer is Tony Isabella and David Anthony Kraft. And Frank McLaughlin is the artist. And if you know Frank McLaughlin, he was the artist on Judo Master, one of the first martial arts comic books in comic books, in all of comic books. Anyway, so here is the first page. You can see just looks like a scene from one of the Western martial arts movies. And there you see Nebres' inking style and martial arts style. And that's his first drawing of Iron Fist. Slay now, die later. There you go. So the focus will not be so much on the story, which is excellent, but it'll be on the artwork, obviously. So that's the end of chapter 1, and then we have flashbacks. And if you can recognize this, this is Doug Monk writing this storyline, and it's Don Perlin who's the artist, kind of mimicking Gil Kane and Larry Hama. You can see some of the art from Marvel Premiere number 15, the first appearance of Iron Fist. He basically does homage scenes from the actual panels of the comic book. And there's Hama's work. And that's just retelling of the origin, based in 15 and 16 of Marvel Premiere. And then we're back. You can see the contrast, the heavy inking style of Rudy Nebres, that attention to detail, that respect for human anatomy. All of that is in his style. The use of background images and foreground images, and the unique use of paneling. The stances. There you go. Some excellent action scenes and fight sequences. All right. These black and white magazines were done for mature audiences. So here we have George Perez, some early George Perez working on Sons of the Tiger. Famous kind of mimicking the Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee Enter the Dragon characters with these three, the Ron Saxon, or John Saxon, Bruce Lee, and so on, Jim Kelly. And there you go. So that's issue. The rest of it was, this one doesn't have articles, mostly story. But the rest of the Deadly Hands of Kung Fu would have articles from the movies, the martial arts movies. And so we start the story arc. And this is issue number 19. And there we have San-Ho Kim's artwork, and you have Rudy Nebres' artwork, and there you go. So this is the start of the story arc. That's one of the reasons why I started collecting. So it's a 6-part epic of martial arts magic, and again, a retelling of the origin. Just amazing artwork. Look at all that detail. Incredible. That's what makes a great artwork, is that attention. You can emphasize your scenes of action when an artist cares for the reader, cares about what they see in the story. and allows themselves to work on the background of the story, as you see here. And that's what makes for great artwork. And there's action scenes, fight scenes galore. There you go. And then you have the articles. And what's unique about this issue is that it features the first appearance of one of the major characters in comic books, in Marvel Comics. And that's why this issue, unbeknownst to many, is quite valuable. This is art by George Perez. This is George Perez's earliest artwork. He is famous for doing the Teen Titans series, the Wonder Woman series, and there's Lynn fighting against and the breakup of the Sons of the Tiger, and the introduction and origin of this guy, the White Tiger. That's why this issue is a little more valuable than the other ones. So that's issue Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, issue number 19. And then we have number 20, which also turns out to be not a cheap issue. This is the first cover appearance of Chuck Norris, because it features an interview with him. So here we have Stan Lee with Chuck Norris. And Chuck Norris with the great one, Jack King Kirby. So here we have a Chris Claremont story. By the way, the story was written by one of the great writers from Marvel. That's Chris Claremont. So this was chapter 2, The Soul Slayer. Again, that beautiful inking style of Rudy Nebres. And almost every page is like a splash page. And he knows how to use the panels. Fill them in with the details if he needs to allow for story continuity. Just incredible work. I just marvel at it, literally. Excellent action scenes, the use of continuity in the fight scene. And there's that famous Iron Fist. That's next issue is chapter 3, and the interview with Chuck Norris, which can be found here. And the story continues with the Sons of the Tiger, the White Tiger story, the beginning. So this is the first, technically the first story arc for the White Tiger. So that's number 20. George Perez, the artist. Oh, I remember reading this years ago. This was one of my favorite stories in Deadly Hands was the Sons of the Tiger story. Anyway, there you go. There's Star-Lord. It features in Guardians of the Galaxy. And this is a retelling of the Sherlock Holmes story, The Hound of the Baskervilles. Alright, so that's number 20. And this is 21. And this one was, because of the damage, and there's one that's even more damage, it was very cheap. It's only a few dollars. So this one, again, Chris Claremont, Rudy Nebres story, part 3, And When I Died. Beautiful splash page with all that great detail. And the action begins in earnest. Excellent fight scenes. That's one of the people criticize his style in fight scenes, but I think they're right on. In black and white, and because it is in black and white, the gray inking just makes the story shine, in my view. Literally shine. There you go. Again, just wonderful detail. And of course he does his own inking in this. And there you see Feng Tu, the land of the dead. How's that for a stab in the back? Next issue. And then we have all the articles. That's Toshiro Mifune. And that's from the Musashi epic movie series. It's a 3-hour-long epic film. It's called the Samurai Trilogy. And this is the second story continuity of The White Tiger. Again, George Perez. He's the creator of the character. Alright, so that's, so you know, this is Perez's early work, but you can see some of his brilliance that would come out in the later work that he did. I think he did the team-up issue with the Teen Titans and the X-Men. Alright, so that's that. And guess who that is? The Prowler. One of Spider-Man's arch-villains. First appearance in Amazing Spider-Man, don't remember. Alright, so that's that one. Issue number 21, and this is the worst copy of that I have. But the stories in here are intact. So you can see the yellow pages. But anyway, the story is intact. Again, this is part 4. Storm the Gates of Hell. You see all the detail. Just wonderful. You got in this story arc, Danny Rand is trying to recover his girlfriend, who was basically kidnapped by this sorcerer type character. but it has all the elements that Nebres is famous for, the fantasy depictions. Just amazing stuff. Showcasing martial arts action like never before. Alright. And there's some famous faces from the Kung Fu movies. There's Wang Yu. That's a famous. I have this. This is Zatoichi and the One-Armed Swordsman. Famous movie. He speaks entirely Chinese in the whole film with subtitles, and he speaks Japanese in the whole film with subtitles. Well done. It's one of the best martial arts movies ever made, is this one. And we go to the story continuity of the White Tiger. There you go. George Perez. Or this one's Art Keith Giffen and Rico Rival. Yeah, the style is very different. Alright, so that's that. And is this the first appearance of Jack of Hearts? I don't think so. I think this is the first appearance. First full appearance is in the next issue, I think. Anyway, so this is issue number, I have to look inside here. Number 22. And this is number 23, of course. And it's again showcasing films and has articles, and there's a beautiful Rudy Nebres splash page of Shang-Chi. Letters page. Part 5, Bridge of Sorrow, Bridge of Pain. And there's Colleen Wing being rescued again by Iron Fist. Excellent fight scenes, action scenes. Non-stop. Elements of fantasy. That's what's unique about this particular story arc by Claremont and Nebres. And of course, in Marvel style, it's really a dialogue between the artist and the writer. And you have the backstory of Wendell Rand, Danny Rand's father. Very unique artwork. Excellent symmetry, use of symmetrical panels. More room for creativity in the large black and white format. Alright, so that's it. Next issue, The Final Duel. And what's this? Sam Peckinpah, the martial arts and other variations on a theme. That's The Killer Elite with James Caan. Alright, and this is the first full appearance of Jack of Hearts. who appears in the pages of Amazing Spider-Man, by the way. So those who collect the Spider-Man continuities. All of these are, for me, the Master Kung Fu, the Shang-Chi's, and the Iron Fists are all nostalgia buys. Deadly Hands, Kung Fu, are all nostalgia. It's what I collected back in the 1970s. Alright, did I say the artist? Who's the artist? Gil Kane, Enrico Rival. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, that's Kane. Yeah, you can tell. See the nostrils. Alright, so that's that. So that's issue 23. And the next issue is number 24. Mike Zeck. And this is a Master Kung Fu splash page. And we have The Angry Dragon Kills, Part 6. The Shaping of Dasha Khan. You can see elements of fantasy, history, being retold. Well worth the read. It's fun to read and enjoy the story when you have incredible artwork like this. Alright. And this is coming to the climax, and it does have a wonderful, yeah, just a wonderful ending. The Firebird. There it is. Faye. There's Jim Kelly in one of his rare films. Three Misses by Roberto Fuentes and Piers Anthony. Jason Stryker series. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first appearance of Piers Anthony and Fuentes as Jason Stryker. Alright. And there's a beautiful splash page of Iron Fist by Rudy Nebres. Articles. And this one is Keith Giffen, the Tribe. A Tiger, Burning Bright. Oh. An interesting story. There he is, Jack of Hearts. Beautiful artwork. Just in the black and white magazines more than, it seems the artists have more room to do what they need to do to tell a story. And there's Sanho Kim's Sword Quest series, which will begin shortly. And there's Master Gunfighter. Alright, so that's that. And yeah, that's not, it says here, first brief Jack of Hearts. the first brief Jack of Hearts you saw in that earlier issue, number 22. So this is number 29. This is the last Rudy Nebres work on Deadly Hands of Kung Fu. And this one is Iron Fist and Shang-Chi. Nice splash page. And here we go. Master of Kung Fu and Iron Fist, a Living Weapon by Doug Monk and Rudy Nebres. And you can see why the Master of Kung Fu titles and even the Shang-Chi titles has subsequently been recovered by Marvel Comics and renewed with stories and by great artists. Artists like Matt Fraction, Ed Brubaker, and David Aja. So I'll show you the graphic novel that you can look at that collects the Immortal Iron Fist series. Anyway, so this is Rudy Nebres. There you go, and that's it. And then we have Stranger and Gunfighter. It's Lo Lee and Lee Van Cleef. It's a famous Western. Forget what, I think it may have another title, but I think the title in the West was The Stranger and the Gunfighter. And there's Black Samurai number 8, which I have the complete set of, by a great writer actually, mystery writer named Mark Olden. Let's see. And there's White Tiger. That's Alfredo Alcala, I think, is the alter ego for the White Tiger. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. There's Briale. And that's where it ends, right there. Alright, so that's that. There's the other issues that... I have that. I have this one, Black Gold. And I have the movie of this. And that's it. Ron Goulart wrote this. He wrote the novelization for this. Novel by Ron Goulart. Alright. So that's issue 29. So this is the, before I go there, this is the last work that Rudy Nebres did on Power Man and Iron Fist. And it's an unusual issue, but it features an old villain for Iron Fist and another villain for Power Man, Luke Cage. So the artwork here, it says Chris Claremont and Mike Barr are the writers, but the artwork is by Rudy Nebres in pages 1 to 12, Frank Miller in 13 to 14, with Ricardo Villamonte doing the inking chores. So if you remember the I can't remember, it's number 25, Marvel Premiere 25, this fellow here, he basically drowns and disappears in the water. But somehow he comes back in this issue. Anyway, the artwork is very different, you can tell. Villamonte's heavy inking style is discernible. You can see elements of the work of Rudy Nebres, but the Villamonte style, just Rudy Nebres is best at inking his own work. Alright, so there you go. I have most of the issues, and I'm working on completing the collection, of course, of Power Man and Iron Fist. Alright, so the last 2 pages are Frank Miller. So I think it's this one and this one. And this is another story, Vampire Strikes Back. The artist here is a guy named Mark Bright. Alright, so that's that. So I hope you enjoyed this entire look at the work of Rudy Nebres on the Iron Fist character, both in the pages of Deadly Hands of Kung Fu and in this issue of Power Man and Iron Fist. This is what has many people of my generation who've collected the Iron Fist character were delighted when this series of comic books came out. And it's just a complete retelling of the story of Iron Fist and fleshing out all the details and history of the Iron Fist character. A nice thick tome published by, of course, Marvel Comics. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this. And of course, and as I showed you before, this is another collected edition of the Iron Fist character with the entire run, plus color artwork of our favorite superhero here. Let's see if I can find it. These are the covers. Yeah, see here, this is what was intended years ago. They were intending to come out with Iron Fist in his own black and white magazine, but as you saw, it came out in the pages instead of Deadly Hands of Kung Fu. So the black and white Iron Fist made it far enough into production for the cover treatment to be completed, as seen in this house ad from November 1974. Its content would eventually see print in Deadly Hands of Kung Fu number 10, with Iron Fist becoming the title's lead feature with issue 19, as we saw. And that's what we went through. Let's see if I can find a nice color splash page here. These are the last issues of the last appearances of Iron Fist in Deadly Hands. Let's see if it has it here. No. Anyway, yeah, here we go. That's a nice color image of Deadly Hands of Rudy Nebres' work on Iron Fist. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this presentation on, and a look through at the actual issues of Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, to one of the great superheroes in Marvel Comics. That's Iron Fist. And if you did, remember to give me that thumbs up, the like, and thanks all of you for your subscriptions. And as always, the comments are always appreciated. Thanks everyone. Okay, thanks. Bye.